Welcome, Zoe. Mm.
Mhm. So
I'm
great to be here.
mm, so grateful to have you. So we've been journeying with people and kind of having them share their stories of transformation. Obstacles that they've had to overcome, um and how they've really gotten to this point in their lives. And so my first question to you is, who were you before the you that you are now?
That's a good question.
Mhm.
Who was I before the version I am now? I was somebody that worked 70 to 80-hour weeks. I smoked cigarettes every day, drank alcohol every day, slept maximum 5 to 6 hours an evening. I was malnourished, underweight, didn't eat enough, quite stressed out. And also pockets of joy as well. I wasn't, I've painted like the worst picture,
Mm.
but I definitely wasn't on my path. I was definitely living a life that was not in total resonance to my soul, but I didn't know that at the time. I just thought that's what life was, being in
Mm.
a codependent, toxic, traumatic relationship and everything else that was part of that. And the spiritual awakening was the turning point of transitioning from that old identity to the version I am today. So, I'm sharing this version. This is, a version that was well over a decade, 14 years ago.
Mm.
And through the process of this spiritual awakening, the identity of who that was started to dissolve and the newness of who I am today started to come online.
Mm.
And yeah, it's been a long journey.
Mhm. That resonates. That resonates. So kind of a two-part for the next question. What would you say led you into that that version of you, that version of your life? And then what can you identify were the things that started to wake you up to the idea that you could actually change and move into this version of you?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say the first thing was I became curious. I became curious as to what was happening in my life and why everything was falling apart. My relationship, my job, my finances, my career prospects, everything seemed to have crumbled overnight. And I was left with no direction, no purpose, no nothingness. And I'd already been questioning a year up to that point, was this, my ultimate reality? Was I fulfilled? Was I happy? And then, spirit took care of the rest and collapsed everything, which gave me spaciousness, which was very uncomfortable to be in that spaciousness of not knowing. But it did allow me to ask those important questions of, okay, who am I then and what am I doing here? And that was the beginning catalyzing question for the spiritual awakening. And then over the course of time, particularly that first year, it became very apparent that who I was and who I had been, that identity had to change in order to make changes. And so then I was questioning, well, who is the version that I want to be? And what does that look
Mhm.
like? Even though I didn't know the how, and even though I didn't necessarily know the steps, I gave myself time to ponder that and sit with it. So I think what happened actually very specifically to action steps was I gave myself a summer where I got the easiest. um, I'd been in catering hospitality for 15 years, so I went and got the easiest job as a waitress so that I had my daytimes free. And I spent the summer just researching two career paths in particular that I felt I might want to pursue without making a decision until the end of the summer. So I was very methodical about it. It's like, okay, I'm going to give myself space, get myself an easy job that pays the bills so that it's not, taking up too much thinking. And by the end of that summer, I had decided to go into a business for myself, making pesto. Actually, I was going to make a pesto business. And another avenue that I was exploring was massage therapy, but massage therapy felt so far removed from catering and hospitality. And a lot of people had told me, they laughed, like, why would you want to do that? Why would you want to do massage? And you like massages, you don't like giving it. And, lots of very discouraging lack of support. And I remember one evening I was in the restaurant and one of my staff members had something going on with her neck, and I just intuitively was just giving her a massage, and I looked at her with this face of, I have made the wrong mistake. It was just suddenly this deep knowing in the pit of my stomach that I wasn't meant to do pesto, that I was meant to study massage therapy. And then my heart sank because, I've got to wait another year because all the schools have started, all the schools that I had looked at, they already started. And as soon as I felt that, but I just felt this knowing, like, no, I feel like I'm meant to do massage. My phone pinged and it was an email from this bespoke massage school that I had visited a few months ago. And the email read, we have one spot left to join us on Tuesday for the year. And I looked at her and was like, I don't know if this is a sign. I've read about this in a spiritual awakening blog post, but I feel like I'm meant to do this massage course. And so I enrolled, and I remember opening the door to massage school and I got this message that shared, this isn't a 30-year career for you, but this is opening a door to what you're going to go on to do. And so that was really the beginning of following the intuitive nudges and taking action on it, even though it's not the be all and end all. And I feel sometimes in life we're so scared to take action because we want it to be a surefire thing for the rest of our lives. And sometimes it's just taking the action that allows all of these different doors to open up. And we can't control that.
Yeah. No, that's beautiful. What would you say to somebody who's not quite at that stage of taking action? They're still kind of in it. Like you had mentioned that you had kind of thought about doing things for a year or more. So anybody who's kind of in that same space and they're feeling stuck, they're feeling like they don't really have a choice. They're feeling like maybe things are falling apart, but it's not the end all and be all. But aren't quite there yet. What would you say to them to actually open up to taking that first step?
Yeah. So the first thing I would share is we don't need to know. And I feel sometimes we're crippled with thinking that it has to be a certain way. And we don't know until we know what it is we're meant to do. And then when we know what it is we're meant to do, it feels very easy to take the action steps. So sometimes it's not easy, but it's easier for the mind. It could create some relief. And so when you're in indecision and not really sure of the direction, or maybe you have a little idea, but you're not, or maybe you don't have any idea at all, go and do something completely different that's unrelated to trying to figure out what it is that you're meant to do. So go do a pottery class or get a big piece of paper and some paint and just allow yourself to paint and maybe put some glitter on there and stick some pieces of paper, or go for a hike, go for a walk, go and do something that's completely unrelated to trying to figure out what it is that you think you're meant to do. And in the action of doing something completely different, and if it can be related more to something that is creative and or getting out into nature, you're allowing yourself to relax the nervous system and open up those creative channels so that you're creatively learning to express yourself in different ways. And there will be little intuitive hits that can come through in that process. So it's doing something completely different, right?
I love that.
Sometimes we kind of sit at home trying to figure it all out, and even just changing up the habits in your daily life. Like if you're used to sleeping on this side of the bed, sleep on the other side of the bed. If you're used to walking down this street, walk down a different street. If you're used to sitting in a particular chair in a cafe, go to a different cafe. Mix up the familiarity of the mind to allow those creative kind of thought processes to fire up differently, right? And
Yeah.
don't treat it like a big deal.
Mm.
Like it's fun and joyful to want to make changes in your life. And particularly, many people, they go for a spiritual awakening and they want purpose. They equate purpose to being a change of career. And there's nothing wrong with that. But purpose is living joy. Purpose is how you want to creatively express yourself. You have free
Mm.
will. So it's whatever you feel inspired to pursue and to follow. And maybe there's a hobby that you can take up that's completely unrelated to your job, but it gets you out of your mind and into your heart and into your body and into your creativity.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. I often share that routine is death for creativity, and comfort is where inspiration goes to die as well. So I love just changing it up, and it doesn't have to be related to anything, but it can just get you out of your regular routine and start you down that path of inspiration. So beautiful. Thanks for sharing that.
Hmm.
Last one for this segment. So um, I want to go into the emotionality of it, because again, I think, so many people aren't even aware of what they're feeling. So can you speak to the feelings that you had, if you can remember, when you were kind of in, the life or the version of you that you didn't necessarily want to be, um, compared to how you feel most of the time now?
Uh, I'm probably the worst person to ask this question because my whole life, whenever I've known that I was no longer in resonant to the life that I was living, I would always make a quantum leap into something else, sometimes less than 24 hours. Like when I knew intuitively that what I was doing was not resonant, I would just shift it. And so I'm probably the worst person to ask that question. But what I can share is I had certainty in the not needing to know all of the things. And I've lived my life by that. So I remember years ago, oh, when was this? I think this was actually around that same time where I knew that I wasn't meant to be in catering and hospitality. I knew I needed to take a break from my partner to get myself into joy because that was affecting our relationship because I wasn't happy. I mean, who would be happy working 80 hours a week for minimum wage, doing all the things? No one would be happy doing that. And I actually went out to France to do a snowboard season, which is something that I always love to do. And I was like, maybe if I go do that for a few months and reset and come back and we'll see where we're at. And everywhere, I remember everyone saying, "But well, where are you going to work? Where are you going to live? What are you going to do?" I said, "Oh, I don't need to worry about that. I just the step for me is getting on the plane, right?" And so I've never worried about what all the steps need to be or how it needs to look. I've always taken leaps of faith into the unknown and allowed the unknown to show me what I need to know when I need to know it. And so what happened? I sat in a bar for the afternoon and I spoke to some people around working and if anyone knew of any ski jobs. And it was the same story. Well, we're kind of in the season now. It's very hard to get jobs here. Fear, 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 their story, their story. And I was like, oh, well, that's okay. And so then I tuned in. I was like, I'm going to go to another bar. No, actually, no, I'm guided to go down to this cafe. So I went down to this cafe and I saw two people that I had met the night before. And they invited me to join them at the table. And they were sharing it. So what are you doing here? And I said, well, actually, I'm looking for a job. This is my experience. Da, da, da. And then this guy at the table said to me, you can have my job. I actually need to leave. I've actually broken a rib and I need to get myself healthy for the summer season. the job that I have is exactly what you're looking for. I said, oh, okay. So that afternoon, he introduced me to his boss. We had an interview and I had a job the next day. Now, life doesn't always work as easy as that, but it can flow when you allow yourself to take a leap of faith in what you don't know, but what you feel inside. And so, yeah, I could have felt fearful or uncertain and not taken action or not got on that plane or stayed exactly where I was, hustling and bustling, trying to find all the steps and have it all perfectly laid out, or take a leap of faith. Because what is the worst thing that can happen? You don't get the job. What's the worst thing that can happen? You run out of money, you get another job. What's the worst thing that can happen? So I always asked myself that to help me overcome any fears or uncertainties that came up. What's the worst that can happen? And as you run down, what's the worst thing that could happen? You realize that it's not actually that fearful, none of it, right? And
Mm, mhm,
we limit ourselves in our capacity to experience the full expression of life by the limitation of our mind needing to know all the steps. And that's not how reality works. When you are wanting to make a true quantum shift in your life and true transformational and long lasting change, you have to play the game and you have to meet the universe halfway by taking steps, even when you don't know that
mhm,
what those steps are going to be. And I have lived
mm,
my life by that, and it has worked most of the time. And when it doesn't, it's because there is something else that I need to know.
mm. So how does somebody who's not used to operating in this way, besides um, kind of going through what's the worst that can happen, what's one or two steps that somebody can do to actually get to the point of being comfortable in the unknown, being comfortable with like, oh, this feels like intuition, I should do this or I should go this direction. When they're not, when so many people are not comfortable with that and they're in the routine and they're in their lives and they're feeling stuck. What can somebody do to be like,
Well,
okay,
I'm
like
going to
this
say,
feels
I'm going
like
to
what
have
I should
some,
do, but
yeah. So I'm going to have some tough love here. If you are one of those people, I would say stay where you are then, right? You can't teach this, but the best thing you can do is at least allow yourself to try it, right? That's the only thing that you can do. And so many people stay where they are because they have this fear of making changes.
mm,
But if you don't allow yourself to at least take that step, then I can't help you. Lee can't help you. No one can help you. You have
mm.
to help yourself. There's no magic formula, right? So that's what I would say is sit and get really present with yourself. Allow yourself to take a chance on yourself. That's it.
Is there anything else you wanna share on this segment? For others to begin to overcome their perceived obstacles, even though I believe they're opportunities to actually move into a better, higher, more loving version of themselves.
Yeah. I mean, what are these obstacles? They're just un, un unknown ways of showing up for yourself. And if you're listening to this and you're on a path of consciousness and awakening, then I'd say you're already 95% there. The 5% of it is just implementing it every day and having a lot of patience with the process. Like I always come up with obstacles. Just because I'm where I am now doesn't mean that I'm through absolutely everything. The life, reality, the universe is always bringing us interesting experiences, and it's just about how we respond to it,
Mm,
right? And we respond to it in loving kindness, compassion, empathy, right? Unconditional love. It eases off the pressure around time, eases off the pressure around expectations of
mhm.
who we think we are and when we think we should have done things and XYZ. It's just like letting it all go.